I'm starting a podcast called Hard Money, Hard Knocks, Bitcoin podcast, dedicated to shine light on those working to improve adoption in their local communities. And I'm starting off the podcast going around virtually connecting with all the meetup organizers across the U.S. And now I'm even going to be starting to cross borders, go to Canada, even talking with people in England. So I hope this helps meetup organizers get going more, be more successful. And then I also hope it gives people the inspiration to start a meetup of their own, give them the courage, like, okay, there's help out there. Meetup organizers are great people. They're always willing to help. And so always reach out to somebody. They're always good. Bitcoiners are great people. So today we're going to be talking with Will from Cascadia Bitcoin and the state of Washington. So Will, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. Oh, really quick, I forgot to do too. The current Bitcoin price is $21,595. You could get 4,630 sats per US dollar right now, and the current block height is 744,286. So sorry about that, Will. But yeah, so welcome. And Will, why don't you just get us going, kind of what got you going into Bitcoin, what got you going into starting the meetup, and just a little bit of your background and how the Cascadia Bitcoin meetup started.
Sure. I've been involved in Bitcoin for a very long time. When I got into it, it was kind of pre-Mt. Gox days, so very, very early. This time I'm a developer by trade, but I wasn't at the time, and I was super fascinated by the technology. And I think, like a lot of other people at that time, we were just kind of fascinated with the technical aspect of it, rather than all of these kind of sociological, political, philosophical implications that it's had that we've kind of like discovered over the years, right? And so I've been a developer in the space a couple times, but I decided to start a meetup. I got inspired by a buddy of mine, Bobby Shell. Shout out Bobby. He runs the North Colorado Bitcoin meetup. He's over with Voltage, really, really great guy. And he kind of suggested that I start a meetup. I thought it was a great idea. I'm located in Bellingham, Washington, and there's a meetup local kind of cryptocurrency meetup here, but it's not Bitcoin focused. And like, shout out to them. Like they do a great job with that. I've spoken at that meetup a number of years ago, but it's not Bitcoin focused. And I wanted to start something that was specifically Bitcoin focused. And so we just kind of dove in and created a Twitter account. A buddy of mine created a logo for us, and we just decided to get together for beers at a local brewery and just kind of see what happened. And through it, we've met just some phenomenal people, like absolutely phenomenal people, which tends to happen when you connect with other Bitcoiners. Like immediately you have this like really crazy wide spectrum of things that you probably have in common. And so it's been a really exciting journey. We've only met a few times. We're a brand new meetup. We're still really small, but we're really focused on growth and just meeting new people at this point.
Absolutely. And so how long ago was your first meetup?
We've been going, we're about to have our 5th meetup, and we're a monthly meetup. So we've been going for 4 months. And we're kind of just getting to the point where we have some like really devoted people that are coming out every month that we met through the meetup. And so, I have a good network of friends here that were super interested in coming. And I was really afraid it was just going to be my wife and I for like month after month after month sitting at a brewery, because we are a small town. We're about an hour and a half north of Seattle, about 20 minutes from the Canadian border. And so our purpose is to target the more rural areas north of Seattle, between Seattle and Canada. And so that's why we call ourselves Cascadia Bitcoin rather than something like Bellingham Bitcoin. The idea is that once we scale a bit more, we'll change the meetup location kind of all around the Puget Sound area, because we don't want to make it exclusive to just this very small area of Washington. So right now we're kind of focusing on Whatcom County, Skagit County, Island, Snohomish County, people who would otherwise have to drive down to Seattle for a meetup.
Yeah. So. And that's a great idea because, I've talked to a few organizers trying to get going, and if you're in a smaller town, like you're not going to be pulling huge numbers, for a while. Be satisfied with a small group. Build yourself a small knit of true Bitcoiners who just need to get together with other Bitcoiners to expand their own knowledge. So, and that's a great idea too, because calling it Cascadia, not just so focused, and it's a broader spectrum, can reach more people. And if you got close cities to you, what's a 15-20 minute drive? And there's the San Francisco Bay Area Bitcoiners who I just spoke with last week. They do something similar. Obviously, they're in a pretty good area to do it, but they have one kind of main hub for it, and then they have a bunch of other meetups around the surrounding Bay Area. So that's a good idea for you guys. And if you ever need help, definitely get in touch with the Bay Area Bitcoiners guy. His name's Billy. So he just he likes to call himself, he's not the organizer, he's just a meetup, kind of director kind of thing. Just shows people where to go, and he'll hop around each meetup here or there. So
right. Yeah, we linked up with the West Coast Bitcoin meetups group on Twitter, and they've been super, super helpful.
Brian Harrington.
Sorry,
Brian Harrington.
Oh, so I have spoken with Brian Harrington. I'm not sure. Is it Brian Harrington that's behind the West Coast Bitcoin meetups group? I'm not sure who runs it. I got invited to it, and they've just been, super helpful in helping promote and helping me connect with other meetup organizers in the West Coast. And I'm fairly new to the West Coast, and so it's nice to meet some contacts out here and people that are people that are doing things in a kind of similar vein.
Yeah, absolutely. The OC Bitcoin Network, I believe it's that's their Twitter handle, and then their usernames, West Coast Bitcoin Network or something like that, right?
I think they
were super helpful. Several guys from that group, super helpful in getting me going when I was living in Bakersfield, California a few months ago. So I'm very familiar with that group, and kudos to them for helping spread meetups across the West Coast. And that's going on here on the East Coast, especially in the South. There's a ton of meetups sprouting up all over the place over here, and it's just a really cool thing to see happen, especially if you're out traveling around. Hit up a Bitcoin group on Twitter and be like, I'll be in your area. A lot of groups will just do a spare of the moment impromptu meetup for you. So reach out to them when you're traveling around, and especially Cascadia up there if you're ever in the Washington, Seattle area.
Right. I moved here from Atlanta. I actually grew up in the Southeast, and back in 2012 and 2013, I attended a few meetups in Atlanta, and they've got, well, at least, it's been a long time, but back in those days, they had a really, really good community, especially with all of the Bitcoin startups in the Atlanta area. It was attracting a lot of talent in that space to that area, and so there were a lot of really interesting perspectives at that time, and that was at a period where Bitcoin was significantly different. The regulatory landscape was completely different. KYC was somewhat new, and you had all these founders kind of trying to figure out how to do everything above board and how to raise a bunch of capital and create a killer product and not get shut down. So it was a very, very, very different time.
Yeah. It's always crazy to hear, because I just got into Bitcoin about a little over a year ago, February of 2021. So I'm still very new to it all. So it's always great to hear, somebody who's been around, with different perspectives, and just hearing different names, and to think how early we are now, and to think about, in 5-10 years, what people will be saying about the bigger names in this time and whatever. And I went to school and I originally wanted to be a high school history teacher, was subbing high school before getting into working in Bitcoin mining. And, there wasn't anything for me. And I kind of forgot where I was going with this, the history. I don't know. Do you remember where I was going?
Well, it's crazy. Everybody's kind of gotten into all these different epochs throughout Bitcoin's history, right? And I've got this tweet pinned on my personal Twitter, and it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Like in the early days of Bitcoin, we kept on, we would kind of fantasize about this reality in which we can do all these things with Bitcoin. Like imagine in 10 years when we're doing X, Y, and Z with Bitcoin, and like we're here now. Like we're there where we used to dream about being. Like we're there now. And something I firmly believe is like that story is not done repeating itself. Like there's this future that we dream about now, right? And we all talk about hyper Bitcoinization and kind of we have one shot to defeat CBDCs and provide a very egalitarian future for people through Bitcoin. And it's like, wait till you see where we are in 10 years from now. Wait till you see where we are then. And like all of our origin stories are going to be so interesting. Like it's funny because I got involved in Bitcoin very early. And so I end up talking about that a lot at the meetup. And I always try to tell people like, it's not that interesting, right? It's like, those days are, there's some entertaining stories, but like, we're all early. Like we're all super early. Like if you understand this technology and its implications on some of the most fundamental systems and underpinnings of human society, like it's undeniable. Like this isn't late in the game. There's not this, in my opinion, it's not even an option that this falls apart tomorrow. Where we're headed is undeniable. It's difficult to define, but it's undeniable that we're headed there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I also approached Bitcoin from a mining perspective early on. I was living in Northwest Florida, and I was trying to raise capital to start a giant mining operation. And we had this warehouse picked out, and we wanted to design this custom HVAC system that piped cold air. And this was, super early. This is when it was still somewhat viable to do CPU mining. Early on, I went to a local university and I borrowed a bunch of unused laptops, and I had them all set up in my house mining Bitcoin on their CPUs a long time ago. That was, granted, I made like virtually nothing off of it because it was still like super competitive at that time, and that was kind of when GPUs were kind of becoming in vogue, and that was really kind of before ASICs. And then once ASICs came around, that just you had to have an ASIC to be competitive, like in any capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I remember where I was going. Just to be able to look back, what history is going to say about this period of time that we're living through, and just besides the fact that it's crap all around us, what an awesome period that we're able to live through. And if a grassroots movement like a Bitcoin revolution is able to happen, what are historians going to be able to say about this period of time? And just how awesome that the meetups are going to be able to have an impact on the way history is going to look back on this. And, we're not the psychopaths and all that. So come check for yourselves and see what kind of great people you're going to run into. Because that's been my experience, is just some really fantastic people, the true Bitcoiners, which are easy to pick out. Once you get talking to them for a few minutes, you're able to tell who's a real Bitcoiner or not. And just, if they're a real Bitcoiner, man, you're going to meet a friend. You're going to meet somebody you can learn from and grow with. And that's been just such a beneficial tool for my growth in the Bitcoin space and my knowledge that I've been gaining throughout this past year and a half.
Yeah, same. Some of the folks that I've met through Cascadia Bitcoin have been fantastic. Like, I'm a musician. I love music, and I just one of the people that I've met through Cascadia Bitcoin hit me up the other day to like stand in for their bass player. I'm not that good, so I declined. But it was like, oh, what a cool opportunity! Like just because we have this common interest in magic internet money, like it opens all these opportunities for other things. And it's like, when you have something that's this specific and like has this this kind of gravity of implications in common, it's really easy to find other things in common. Like Bitcoin is really, really good at that. Yes. And it kind of raises the question, like, why has money never been that good at this? Like, why have we never seen it be this good before? And it's like, once you start throwing fiat out the window, and you start introducing these concepts of like honestly owning something, right? Truly owning something that can't be confiscated from you. Like it's weird because you have a lot of people on Twitter, you have a lot of people on Reddit who make these claims like, since getting into Bitcoin, I think this now and I feel this now. And it can be really easy to kind of write that off as like, man, come on, like you're really sounding like a cult. But it's like, no, once you like this is upending fundamental ideas that we've held as people for, you know, over 100 years. And it's like there are gonna be interesting side effects that were, you know, impossible to predict. And we get to watch that. And I think specifically meetups are a great place for that, because you have this intersection of people with, you know, outside of Bitcoin have very, very different ideas, or even within Bitcoin, very different ideas. And everybody comes together and you all kind of share this dream, right? You know, I think that there are people that come to meetups because they're super jazzed about the idea and they understand it and they just want to connect with other Bitcoiners. But I think the most interesting stories that I've gotten from the meetup so far have been people that just want to learn, like are just super interested and they want to learn more. But, you know, there's so much FUD, so many scams on the internet. It's, you know, you're only going to get so far by kind of Googling around. You're going to be very skeptical of a lot of things. But, you know, here when there's this meetup that's not asking for anything, you know, we're not asking for, you know, anything other than them to come and share beer with us and I'll buy you your first round. And like, you know, it makes it very easy for people, like very low barrier to entry for people to come in and, you know, take the orange pill, right?
Yeah.
You know, for instance, our first meetup, we had I was super nervous, you know, because it's my wife and I and one of my best friends, and we're sitting there and we're like, man, do you think anybody's going to show up to this? and we had a couple people come out, and one of them was a local artist. She was a really cool gal. She's a local painter, and she came in and was super curious about NFTs, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a tough one, right?
Yeah.
And so she came in wanting to know how to mint NFTs of her artwork. She left wanting to know how to set up a store that accepted Lightning, that worked on the Lightning network, and just sell her art, not sell NFTs of her art. Just I just explained to her, I'm like, are you selling right now? She's like, yeah, I have a website and I, you know, sell prints and I sell originals. I'm like, are you accepting Bitcoin yet? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, you know, there's no permission to ask to accept it. It doesn't cost anything to accept it. But once you start accepting it, you are now a part of the Bitcoin economy. Like you are tapped into a completely new market segment where Bitcoin nerds will flood to your shop to give you business to support you because you're on the same page, right? And, you know, we've seen that with like local grocers and, you know, brick and mortar local businesses that, you know, start accepting Bitcoin. And then suddenly they have this entirely new market that comes to them because it's like, I don't know about you, but, you know, I would love to go and patronize a local business that shares my ideals and shares my vision of the future. Like I'll go pay more money to give them business because I want them to succeed because they are, you know, instrumental in bringing about that future that we all want to happen. Right. Yeah. So it's amazing to see our transformation like that.
For that too, all you got to do is at that moment, because I worked at a brewery that started accepting Lightning payments, and all you got to do is convert, you know, on Cash App or Strike, you know, right before you go eat, get that current price. That way you're not overspending your Bitcoin, whatever. And man, it's so awesome supporting a business that does that, you know. Right. Anytime there's an opportunity, I could do that. You know, I will convert my money, my fiat dollars into Bitcoin just to support that business. Because one, it allows me to be a better user of the Bitcoin network, which enables me to explain to other people, have different experiences with different signing devices or, you know, hardware wallets, whatever. And just be able to have a way of expressing to people, look at these different options and not just be one-minded. And I also find the best user experience for myself. And, you know, I got my preferences on what I like to use. And so, you know, what you need to talk to her about too is she needs to start doing Bitcoin art and then selling it for Lightning payments. And then she needs to get in contact when she does Bitcoin art with Bitcoin Park in Nashville, put on by the Nashville Bitcoin Group, Rod and Odell out there. And they're do like an art exhibit at their new venue that they got out there. So, who knows what she could take off one day with this. So maybe tell her start doing some Bitcoin paintings, and I'll send her some sats one day for some.
That'd be amazing. I hope she comes back. She came to the first one and we haven't seen her again. But we've had a couple people that showed up at the first one and we've seen every time now.
Yeah.
Shout out to Devin. He's the guy that asked me to stand in and play bass. We met him through the meetup, and he was texting me just the other day, being like, "Hey, I want to start helping out with marketing and getting some growth and getting more people to show up." And it's like, man, this is how it happens right here, just organically. You meet the right people. They want to take ownership. Surprise, surprise, Bitcoiners want to take ownership of something, right?
Yep.
Who could have seen that coming?
No kidding.
And it's super interesting to see that. We one thing that we do, one thing I'm super committed to with the meetup is I love to give away copies of the Bitcoin Standard to newcomers, right? And that's something I do every meetup. It's really funny getting a couple copies of that in the mail every month from Amazon. And so it's part of my like ritual getting ready for the meetup where, I'll take the books and put them in my bag with my laptop and head out. And I always like to bring a couple little props along with me, things that nice, very nice.
Shout out to Jeff, the owner of Lengthwise Brewing Company in Bakersfield, California. He sent me 10 copies to give away to some meetups. So
amazing.
But that's awesome. Man, for all meetup organizers, if you have a few extra bucks to spare, buy some Bitcoin Standard books and give that away to people. Such a useful tool, so easy. Put it in their hands, make them take action and learn for themselves. What better way to orange pill someone than have them learn on their own?
Right. We've been meeting at a brewery called Colshan Brewing in Bellingham. An amazing brewery, great people, great space. We try to give away a few of these every meetup, and I try to bring a couple things with me every meetup that kind of pertain to the topic at hand. Like the last one, I brought I wish I had it on my desk here, but it's a denarius coin from ancient Rome. If you are familiar with the story of the denarius, and it's one of the greatest stories of currency debasement and coin clipping and devaluing a currency by the state that there is in human history. And it's really fun to take that to a Bitcoin meetup because it's like, this is what money used to be. And now we're blazing the trail for what money is about to be. Right. Yeah. And so that's super interesting. We did that one time and we talked about the history of currency debasement. And so I gave away a bunch of copies of the Bitcoin Standard because that's like, if someone's truly interested and they want to dive into not just the what, but the why of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Standard is the perfect book for that. Right? Absolutely. It's the perfect book. It outlines all these historical examples and, it just starts making sense immediately.
And it's not about Bitcoin until the very end,
Right.
If you take out the last chapter that, you can name that book, like The History of Money,
right.
Like it could be something entirely different. And that's a great part. It's not just, they're trying to pound Bitcoin in me. It's, no, I'm getting an experience on what money has been like, through the past centuries. And it helps me understand our current financial situation, what happened in 1971 and where we are now. And It just makes things so much clearer and so much more obvious what's happening right now.
Yeah, that's right. We just, at our last meetup, we had a gal that came out and she didn't really know anything about Bitcoin other than criminals use it and it's bad for the environment. Right. And so that was a really fun conversation. Like, I love those challenges where people come in with these kind of assumptions, things that they've heard in the media, FUD they've heard on, from legacy media about Bitcoin, or, FUD they've heard from, for lack of a more polite term, altcoiners. Those are always really fun conversations to have because like they check my own ideas, like, because people bring in their own, especially when people have negative biases toward Bitcoin and they come in to the meetup and they're like, yeah, I just wanted to come and get some perspectives from just some Bitcoiners rather than people who are into something else saying negative things about Bitcoin. It's like, well, awesome. That's great. Like, we love questions. If you're confident in your idea, you should have no problem discussing it with someone who wants to disagree with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love those conversations. We had a gal come in last meetup, and bad for the environment, and criminals use it. And one of the things that I always like to say to the argument of like, drug dealers, criminals, and pornographers, right, is when the DEA raids a house that's manufacturing drugs, what do they find there? They find drugs, weapons, and US dollars, right? They find anytime some criminal operation is raided, you find US dollars. So why doesn't the US dollar have the same reputation as being used by criminals? Because I would say that it's actually much more consistently used by criminals than Bitcoin is, right? And so that's one where they all kind of, oh man, I think you're right. Like that's a great point. And it's like, yeah, turns out fiat is supported. Like the entire reason that fiat works is at the threat of violence, right?
Exactly.
And so I got to explain to her about how Bitcoin is helping secure the grid, in terms of the environmental argument. And that blew her mind. She'd never heard of that. And, a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that, a lot of these power generation facilities, these power plants, they, especially, natural gas, et cetera, they'll flare this off to atmosphere when they're overproducing. When the grid demand doesn't meet what they're producing, they have to flare it off to atmosphere. And it's like, why would we not recapture that? But even all of that aside, I always like to kind of reduce the environmental argument to, let's say we weren't doing those things. Let's say we weren't securing the grid with Bitcoin. Let's say we weren't making good environmental decisions with Bitcoin, and we're just hashing away with no thought about the environment or environmental impact. Well, I think that the energy consumption of the Bitcoin network, if that's what we have to pay to get a fair and permissionless monetary system that's free and open and permissionless for everyone in the world. Banking infrastructure is one of the greatest catalysts for economic upward mobility. And if we can provide that to everyone on the planet in a way where there are only rules and no leaders, that sounds like a pretty good use of energy. Like certainly a better use of energy than like moving an aircraft carrier across an ocean just to saber rattle to some other global superpower and then moving it home, right? Those aren't even comparable to me. So.
And me and my buddy, we were driving down the road, and we saw like one of those safeguard vehicles, the armored vehicle that picks up cash. Bitcoin fixes that. You don't need those cars driving around. It's internet money, and also you don't need to train people to go risk their lives. And especially in today's, depending on where you're living, all these wacko DAs that don't criminalize criminals. That's a really dangerous job to be doing nowadays. And not to mention is using fuel, and that, there goes the environment issues and, just so many cool different aspects. And I went to a wedding back home in California a couple of weeks ago and was talking to my uncle about, the same aspect, just energy FUD and everything. And really started opening his eyes when I got kind of down to the Bitcoin mining and what it does and how it can help the infrastructure. And he was like, wow. And he's a successful guy. He's done pretty well for himself. So, and he kind of lives in California beach area. So he definitely has might have some particular views towards that because here's the legacy media and stuff. So it's cool. It's so cool to see kind of like at least, oh, wait, okay. And then it's like, oh, sweet. I was that first touch that really kind of helped him click. And yeah, that's the coolest thing. Like my buddy will kind of give me crap for, oh, don't quit trying to give her Bitcoin for her tip. Like she doesn't care. But it's like, what if that's her first touch or his that, gets him to buy it here in a couple months or something, who knows? And then like getting up the meetup going, I have a co-organizer who helps me run ours. His name's Connor. And we got together and I found out we're like the same age. He has a fiance and who's into Bitcoin as well. I'm sure mainly because of him, but and mine's been dragged along into this because of me as well. So we were able to go on like a double date just to kind of get to know each other, but also we're new to the area. So my fiance now has someone to get along with. So it's been really cool that aspect too. And, just the relationships that you build with certain people in the Bitcoin space. Like I have some really genuine friends who I've met through Bitcoin, and just, I wish I could keep in touch with everybody more because there's such great people out there who, I definitely wouldn't have ran into if it weren't for all this.
Right. I think my wife is probably in a similar situation. Like, I think she's like fully orange pilled at this point, probably because of me.
Yep.
It's funny. I think the last time like we really talked about it, every now and then I'm like, so how do you feel about all this? Like, especially on the way home from a meetup where, we all learn things every time we meet, right? We learn things just from our own thinking when that kind of results from the stimulus of somebody else's idea or, whatever. And we'll be on the way home and I'm like, so what do you think about that? Like, have you ever heard that idea before? Have you ever heard that concept in Bitcoin? She's like, no, that's entirely new to me. And she's like, I'll be honest, there's a lot of the technical aspects of it that are still very much a mystery to me. But, and she's kind of says like, I have to take that on faith, right? I have to trust you, right? And though you're my husband, like, of course I trust you, but the idea is, don't trust, verify, right? And so it's always just an interesting discussion to kind of suss out where those gaps in understanding are. But the exact same thing is happening with us. It's like we meet all these awesome people that are into it, and we happen to have like a lot of other things in common. Go figure,
Yeah.
right? And it's like a lot of these common interests just kind of manifest in Bitcoin. It's like when I meet somebody who is into Bitcoin, they're probably a very self-selective person with ideas of like personal sovereignty, and it's like we're gonna get along great.
Yeah.
Like that's when you start, like, self-reliance is one of those characteristics that is indicative of so many other things, right? Like when you are committed to being reliant upon yourself, or reliant just within your own kind of family unit, like there are a lot of other, I feel like there are a lot of other traits that kind of come along with that. That's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? And I think Bitcoin's kind of in that same vein, right? Like if you're into Bitcoin, there's probably a substantial number of other things that you're super into. Like one big thing that we try to do at the meetup is we talk about privacy a lot and self-custody. I heard you talking on a couple other episodes and kind of asking like, what's the primary focus of your meetup, and like, what do you really like to bring to the table there? We love talking to newcomers, and we love talking about self-custody because too many people have their Bitcoin on exchanges, which means they don't have any Bitcoin, and we are working super hard to get them off, right? One of our last meetups, I love those little seed backups that are a bolt with a bunch of washers and stamped in the washer with the block mitt jig.
Yep.
I 3D printed a couple of those, gave a few away at the Bitcoin meetup. I gave away the materials to make a seed backup, and just kind of wheeling that out at a meetup. People are like, "What is that? Like, what do you mean?" I'm like, "This is a Bitcoin wallet. This is Bitcoin right here." I don't have anything stamped on it right now. I would not carry that into public, but but I'm like, yeah, all you have to do is get like a punch kit on Amazon for $20 and a little anvil or just a hard surface, and it's great. My wife and I are expecting our first child. We just found out somewhat recently, and it was great because as soon as we found out that we were pregnant, I went straight out into the garage and I started making a wallet. Right. And so I started making a seed backup. I'm like, this is kiddo's college fund right here.
Yeah.
And it's really, by the way. Yeah. Thank you. It's really cool to be able to do those types of things. Like, I can set up essentially what amounts to a permanent, unseizable safe deposit box. That's for my unborn child's best interest. My child will have had Bitcoin longer than they've been alive. And I just think that's a really interesting concept. And I didn't have to ask anybody to do that, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't have to sign any papers. I didn't have to open any accounts to do that. I was able to do that in the privacy of my own home without anybody, well, aside from your viewers, knowing it. Yeah. So, I think that's really cool. And I think, to your point, where, you were talking about kind of people's first experience with Bitcoin, right? Getting off zero. I feel like getting off zero is like that's when things start to click for people. And so like another big focus that we have is on ramps, right? And me personally, like outside of the meetup, I like my big focus is on Bitcoin on ramps, is getting people off of zero. Whether that's like Bitcoin roundups, kind of like I think Coinbits provides that service, a Bitcoin roundup, kind of like Acorn, where it looks at your transactions with like your credit card, debit card, and it'll round up the transactions, kind of like Acorn does into equities, but into Bitcoin. I think that's super powerful to get people off of zero, and low friction DCA platforms. Coinbits again is a really good example of that. Strike, unbelievable. The fact that you can buy, for a while I was buying $1 of Bitcoin every hour on the hour, 24 hours a day. For a while. And then I realized like finding out my cost basis for this is going to be impossible. Like, yep. And so like, as cool as this is, like, I don't know if it's exactly viable. Yeah. But shout out companies like Strike and Swan and Coinbits. Like they do a great job with that. I feel like they add a lot of legitimacy or perceptions of legitimacy to the space. And so we try to show people that a lot. So pretty much every meetup I'm doing a Strike transaction, moving it to cold storage, while people watch, and giving away a wallet, giving away a Bitcoin standard copy or two. Those are kind of standard practices at Cascadia Bitcoin, and awesome. People have been coming back because of it. It's been really effective.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Cash App. I use it for like my actual bank now. But now they have roundups as well, so I'm able to use that aspect. With whenever I'm using my card. So I was really pumped to see that happen the other day. But yeah, it's, get your Bitcoin off exchanges. Don't buy on an exchange, not your seeds, not your coins, not your keys, not your coins. So yeah, that's we have a guy at our group. His name's Charles, and I believe he's Charles Palooza on Twitter, and he makes those 3D printed what you're just talking about,
the blockbit jigs. Yeah.
So he made me a couple. He gave a couple out. So those are really cool aspects, and really, I mean, how simple it is. And then go bury some in your backyard or something. I don't know. You can do so many cool things, hide it places, and just know that rain, fire, whatever, it's going to be there. So.
Right. And giving away these things, right? Giving away little like seed backups, like pre-made seed backups, obviously not seeded, right? With a recovery phrase, but they're, built so that somebody can just take it and stamp it, or giving away the jigs. It's like being Johnny Appleseed with like the seeds of liberty, right? Yeah. Like you can just kind of pass these things out, and they're little seeds that might of an idea that to someone that's new that might grow into something, huge. They may go on to start their own meetup, which meetups are like, this grassroots Bitcoin movement through meetups is unbelievably powerful. I think that we haven't even begun to realize the full power of these like hyper local Bitcoin meetups, especially really little ones. I think they have enormous power. And so you start giving these little trinkets away and these little ideas, and they go and grow into much bigger things. Like, I was talking about my buddy Bobby. He inspired me to do this, to do Cascadia Bitcoin, and that's the exact same concept. He planted a seed, right, and it grew into something much bigger. And like granted, we're just a sapling, right? But I think with the things that we have coming up, the things that we're planning a big event yet, but we're planning a pretty large event that's going to be kind of the intersection. It's going to focus on the intersection of beef ranching, beef farming, and Bitcoin, which is a super exciting space. Like, I think that's such a cool crossover of ideas. We just purchased or put a deposit down on a quarter of a cow recently, and it's grass fed, local. Like these cows eat the same food that comes from the same place that our produce grows in. Like, amazing. And so the idea is that we want to try to onboard farmers because it's in their best interest. They can make they're by cutting out a lot of these intermediaries and middlemen, they're free to make decisions that might lead to a healthier product, but a slightly more expensive product. But they can bear those costs because they've reduced costs of the friction in between them and the consumer by switching to Bitcoin and shipping direct to consumer. And so it's super fascinating how that's all playing out. I'm still very new to this idea. I know that there are some really cool organizations that are focusing on this, like the Beef Initiative and the Salazzo and Clemenza on the Meat Mafia podcast talk about this a lot. And so I'm very new to that space, but it's something that we intend on bringing to the meetup in a pretty big way. Like Bellingham, Washington is pretty well known. There used to be a statistic around it, like we're the number whatever in the country of cities that consume their own locally produced goods, but we're up there. That's a really big idea here. It's super important to people here. And so if we can take the fiat system and throw it out the window, and we can give business to local farmers that are here in the local area, like that's a win for culture. Just it's so compatible with the culture here. That's something that's really important to people here. And I think it just needs to have a light shine on it, right? And so that's what we're getting ready to do. Awesome. To be determined what that exactly what that looks like.
Yeah, well, get in touch with Texas Slim and hit him up. He's wanting to build nodes all across the country, so hit him up and get in touch. But yeah, all the different paths that Bitcoin can intersect is just unbelievable when you can really zoom out and just realize, like, man, it could change every aspect of my life, in so many different ways. You've been really good at answering all the questions I was going to ask you. Thanks for listening to previous podcasts. But so about how many people do you get at your meetups, would you say, just so other groups could get an idea of how many people, because not all groups get, 100 people, whatever. There's a lot operating 5 to 15 or whatever. So
that's where we are, is in that kind of 5 to 15 range. Like it really, it varies greatly, meetup to meetup. Like we are extremely small, under 10. We're a small area, and I think that's kind of one of our strengths right now, because it's we don't have like a very formal process. Like we just get together at a brewery, and one of us will buy the first round, and we'll just sit there and BS about Bitcoin, and we'll kind of we'll have it. I'll go into it with an idea. I'm really looking forward to the days where other people can hit me up that want to come and say, hey, I want to speak about a thing, right? Yeah. So right now I'm kind of leading a lot of the discussions, and because the majority of people that are coming out are new to Bitcoin, but that's not going to be the case. And in the coming months, those people who were new are now starting to understand ideas about self-custody, privacy, and a lot of these kind of core tenets of the Bitcoin ideology, right? Even though I'm really hesitant to say that, because I'm a firm believer that Bitcoin is permissionless, and there is no defining characteristic of a Bitcoiner. Anybody can be into Bitcoin for any reason, right? And I think that's one value that we really try to make clear at our meetup. It's like you can be into it for your own reasons, as little or as much as you want. And so I think that attracts, like, we have a really, really diverse group that comes out in terms of ideas, and we just want to grow that. I can't wait until some people start taking the reins in terms of leading discussions and talking about their own uses of Bitcoin. One of our attendees that's been coming since the beginning. He's a big musician in town, and I want to see him start selling music for Bitcoin online. I like on his own, set up a BTC Pay server or something like that, and cut out sites like Bandcamp, right? Cut out Spotify and sell it for yourself. Set up your own storefront that requires like no maintenance. I want to see that happen. Then I want to see him come in and talk about that experience and talk about how that's impacted not just his own personal brand and personal business, but his art, right? Because it forces you to think in a different way. And I think that's so unbelievably healthy. And so like we try to bring a lot of those ideas and then we kind of wrap them in this like somewhat libertarian, kind of privacy oriented way. And I think that's really compelling to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I hope our group, we get people with knowledge. I always ask, like, is there anybody new here to Bitcoin? Because I would like to go into the basics for you and just give you a learning experience. And whenever I ask a group that, like, nobody raises their hand for the most part. So, but there, yeah, we get about 15 people or so at ours as well. And we just had a guy ask to do a little demonstration on multi-sig or discussion on it, and that was really great. We're going to have a guy, our next meetup is going to be focused on like Bitcoin mining. And so we're going to have a student from the University of Tennessee. He's from Vietnam, and he wrote a paper on proof of stake versus proof of work. So he's been asking me for a couple months on wanting to discuss that. So we're going to give him the stage to do that. And just what a cool feature about the meetup is powering other Bitcoiners around you. You know, there's so many bright minds out there. We need more people to speak out, and because those are going to be the people going out and causing more adoption out there. We need more strong orange-pilled people, you know, like ourselves, and to go around and spread the message more. So that's just what a beautiful thing, the minds that come together and the products that get produced. It's just
right.
It gets me so bullish on Bitcoin meetups. And like you said, we're just getting going with them. I think there's a lot to come with meetups. You look at the way the Bitcoin conference is growing, and just I've talked to people who've gone to that, and they just love the experience of being with other Bitcoiners. So doing something more often to put you in contact with other Bitcoiners, especially when you put these meetups on, a lot of people will be like, what? I thought it was the only person. I'm not alone. And that's so cool that it's like, no, you're not alone. Come join us. Bring more. And to think what it'll be here in a year, it's so much fun. I love, we do it once a month too. And, I don't necessarily need it much more. I don't want it to be a full-time job. But I really look forward to that evening. And I always generally kind of meet and sit and talk with somebody new, get stuck with somebody new, and just have developed some really good relationships out of it.
Right. It's the meetup is like the highlight of my month, like one of the big highlights of my month. As I said, I'm a developer, and I work with a lot of really, really smart technologists on a daily basis, and have for over a decade. But one thing that I've noticed is that through the last 10 years of being involved in Bitcoin and working with early stage technology companies, is I get a lot of skepticism from fellow developers, and it's like that kind of blows my mind, right? It's like, why are you not more into this? Like, why are you not more interested in this? Just even from just a technical aspect, right? Like the ideas of digital scarcity and this peer-to-peer network that subverts like this huge power structure. Like, how is that not compelling to you? Like, how is that not a compelling story to you? And so it always kind of blows my mind that more of my colleagues aren't interested in this. And so I've been that crazy Bitcoin guy at like every company I've worked for the last 10 years. And it's funny to like go and look on Twitter and see like CTOs of past companies that I've worked for hitting me up, be like, hey, I'm interested now. Like, I want to get into this. And it's like, oh, now you do.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. You do when the price is 60K, but not when it was 400 when I was.
Everybody gets the price they deserve.
That's right. Exactly.
So. I got a buddy who's just impounded that in my head. And so it makes a lot of sense now.
Right.
But yeah. So what is it that really orange pilled you? What aspect of Bitcoin is it that really got you diving hard into wanting to learn more?
Honestly, I mean, Bitcoin was a very different time then. This was like 2011, or Bitcoin was a very different, the community was a very different place. It was a very different thing back then. And for me, it was the technology. That's what got me interested at first, right? The idea of making a digital asset non-duplicative, just that concept and the implementation of digital scarcity was super fascinating to me. Like that entire idea, and then the cryptographic aspect of Bitcoin was phenomenally interesting. Like when somebody first explained it to me, this was, I looked at the website, and the Bitcoin.org website back then was like super rudimentary. And I think this was before the alpaca video, right? And I just found it to be really fascinating, like investigating the people who are working on it, the people who were talking about it the most, and they all kind of seem to have these ideas that I shared, outside of technology, right? So, sociological or societal ideas and philosophical and political ideas that I really identified with, this kind of self-reliance. And, this was before, this was before there were a lot of ideas of a store of value within Bitcoin. This is pre block size wars, where that really kind of crystallized that idea, I feel like. And so it was a very different place. It was very, digital cash. Like, this is just a medium of exchange. And, you want to buy your groceries with this. You want to buy coffee with this. And the fact that I could go and essentially make a change to the same data set that's replicated all over the world in seconds for free and transmit value to somebody like that, it was undeniable. I was like, this is something I have to be a part of. Like, this is so fascinating. And then it was later, as we started, as the ecosystem started to develop, that, and, some of the really great minds within Bitcoin started thinking of the implications of this. That's when the ecosystem as we see it today kind of started to form, right? Where we're talking about, wow, this like upends like fundamental power structures in the Western world. Like, this is huge. This takes power away from, groups of people that are only allowed to exist because they are able to commit acts of violence to ensure that they get to continue existing, right? And so that was really what got me. I even went and made an altcoin in like 2013 called Ass Pennies. It was a big joke, and it was just like a fun technical project to kind of crack open the hood and like really understand the inner workings of how consensus and digital scarcity work within that type of project. And we did it purely as a joke, and then we were like, let's make an announcement on the Bitcoin Talk forum as a joke, right? And so we start watching the network hash rate climb, and then we start getting GitHub issues of people wanting like security hot fixes. And then people started selling cloud mining contracts for it on eBay. And we're like, we never intended to do this. Like, this was supposed to be a joke. Like, it's based on an Upright Citizens Brigade comedy sketch. Like, we never intended to do this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was kind of the genesis of like, how I think that's kind of how I got into it. It was the technical aspect, and it just was something fun. It was this fun, cool experiment with neat tech, and it seems like there's more to it than we think. We just haven't kind of figured out what that is yet. So it's like this big blank slate built on really interesting world-changing technology. So like, as a young developer, like, why would I not just like dive headfirst into that? So
yeah,
and I'm still in the middle of that dive.
The longer I've gotten into Bitcoin, the more I wish I understand more of the technical stuff to it, because just what a fascinating rabbit hole of Bitcoin. Looking into all that, I wish I had developing skills and stuff. I'm starting to understand things more. I got a node about a year ago, and trying to learn how to do all that when I'm a non-techie person at all. That was a little bit of growing pains for sure. But to have it up and running and slowly getting things figured out, still need to get more, but for the most part, I have a functional node. And now people could stream sats. If they listen to this on Fountain, they could stream sats straight to my node. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's the technical aspect, the fact that it's a technology ruled by rules and not by rulers. Right. Just so beautiful is what money's been missing.
I think that gives me a great idea for the next meetup. I think that we should set up a node or walk through like setting up an Umbrel or something like that at our next meetup. I think that would be a really, really cool topic. I'm surprised I haven't thought of that before. So
absolutely.
We'll definitely give you credit at the meetup for that one.
No worries. Do your thing. Then, because there's so many, you need to challenge people. People need to broaden their knowledge of Bitcoin. If they're in it to, now, why not push them a little bit more and because that's ultimately what Bitcoin is. That self-sovereignty aspect of it is what attracts so many of us. So we need the new people to understand that too. So teaching people about nodes and all that, that's a great idea. It's something that we'll be doing here at ours, because we do a structural, topic focused discussion, and then it's just social time after that, and just something to hopefully guide discussion.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Great idea.
Yeah, we one thing that we want to start doing is, being that we're in such a small area, is we really want to have people, first off, our venue, great. We love them. I have not asked them to start accepting Bitcoin yet. I'd like them to see our faces a bit more before I start seeming like a salesman to them or something. But my buddy Bobby, who I mentioned recently, he and Brian Harrington did an episode of the Bitcoin is Hard podcast, where they talked about a lot about real estate. And, they kind of mentioned like Bitcoiners need to own more businesses, more brick and mortar businesses, because I love our meetup space. Like, I love our venue. They're great folks, and I love giving them our business. I really wish they accepted Bitcoin. I really wish that we could pay for beers with sats. That would be such a win for our meetup, which I think our big strength is onboarding newcomers. Mm-hmm. And for them to be able to come to a meetup and have their first experience be at that meetup paying with sats, right? Because I have no problem saying like, okay, well, I'm going to buy you a beer, but here's how we're going to do it. You're going to set up a wallet, right? And I'm going to send you the cost of, a little bit, like $10 in Bitcoin or something like that. And you're going to go buy a round of, a beer for us with that. Right. And so they get that first experience of like, we help them set up a wallet. They get their first sats. They spend their first sats. They use the Lightning Network for the first time, all on the first night. And then they get to sit down with the people that showed them how to do that and share a beer with them and laugh and have a good time. Like, that's such a winning formula for getting people involved, because I feel like the hesitation from a lot of people is they feel like they're being sold something. And this is something I think about a lot. And when they come to a meetup where they didn't pay anything to come, they didn't pay for any admission, nothing's being asked of them, and someone's giving them $10 and buying them a round of beer, and they didn't have to do anything for it, like, that's a big time, and they're leaving with a copy of the Bitcoin Standard. Like, that's such a winning formula, and it's just all about planting those seeds that grow into something bigger, because they go home for Christmas and they tell their family about it, and they're like, no, hey, your perceptions about the Bitcoin world are a little bit flawed, and here's been my experience with it. And it just grows and grows and grows. And that's why these meetups are so instrumental, because you're not just a face on the internet. You're not just a floating head in a box, right? Like, you become real. And I think what you're doing with this podcast and surfacing a lot of these stories, it's super instrumental. Like, this is it happening, right? This is it. Our abstract notion of how this grows, we're watching it. Like, we are Bitcoin experiencing itself.
Yeah. And that's, it's a pinch me moment when you truly step back and realize, what we're doing. Just we're helping write history, essentially. And me being a history guy and having a good understanding of history, it's incredible what Bitcoin is doing for our world.
Right.
So just, are there any other like current projects or apps that you're looking forward to that you've been keeping an eye on?
I focus a lot on on-ramps. And so I think that's kind of where my big interest lies. I think that's where kind of my value add outside of the meetup lies. And, I've got my eye on what, companies like Strike and Swan and Coinbits are doing. River Financial's another. I think one of the things that's had me really inspired lately is Jack Mallers, talking about how Bitcoin exchange fees are a race to the bottom. So he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the bottom, 0%, and you can buy by the hour. And like, that is such a remarkable thing to show to somebody who's a newcomer to the space. Like, you can buy this for no fees whatsoever and get it almost instantly in your own possession. And so, those are the companies those are the products that I find really interesting. That, and I haven't done like a technical deep dive on it yet, so I'm not entirely sure exactly how it works yet. I just haven't had the time. But authenticating with Lightning, authenticating to web services, kind of like how Stacker News has done, how you can log into Stacker News with your Lightning wallet. That is really cool to me. Using Bitcoin as like an identity provider across the internet. Yeah, sign me up. That's awesome. Like
Yeah.
I've really got my eye on that right now.
Yep. I got so many different. I just got a new computer not too long ago. When I got my Node, I got some old junky computer just get me going one. So I'm dealing with so many different sign-ins and stuff and trying to keep up on all that. So it's been a real pain. So having something like that would be awesome.
Right.
And something I'm not too familiar with. I've heard some things, but I hope I get to learn more one day just because it's becoming more popular.
Right.
So, and then just to kind of start wrapping things up, just your final thoughts on the Bitcoin space and just a last chance to promote your group and say a few more things about Cascadia Bitcoin.
Well, in terms of the Bitcoin space at large, like keep going. Like we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
We're it's kind of a meme saying like we're early, right? But we're early. Like we're early. We've just talked about why we're early. This story is not done repeating itself. And I think it's really cool to see everyone kind of carving out their own role in that story. For me, that's on ramps and a meetup. And that's kind of my Bitcoin story. Funny enough, I'm actually working on a project right now called Orange Pill Stories, where people get to post post stories about really cool introductions to Bitcoin and introducing people to Bitcoin. Like I find that a lot of Bitcoiners are really interested in hearing those experiences from other people. And I would love a place for that to be shareable. But yeah, if you're in the Northwest Washington area and you want to come out to Cascadia Bitcoin, you can find us on meetup.com for under the name Cascadia Bitcoin. We have a Cascadia Bitcoin Twitter account, and we have a Discord server with like 2 people in it. So if that's your flavor, feel free to join. And if you want to attend virtually, that's something we're going to be exploring in the near future. We want to hear perspectives from outside of our local area, avoid an echo chamber, and we welcome good faith debate and tough questions, and we're just going to keep on trucking and trying to grow.
Absolutely. Well, Will, I appreciate you being on this with me and telling us what you're doing up in the Northwest, and just appreciate you doing Satoshi's work and continuing, pushing Bitcoin forward because, with current situations, these meetups are still flourishing. So thank you for all that you're doing for us. I'm going to say a few more things and I'll catch back up with you here in a sec.
Awesome, Shane. Thanks a bunch.
You got it. All right, so that was Will from Cascadia Bitcoin Group up in the Washington State area. So check them out. And just thank you for listening. We are on Fountain app. You can stream sats straight to my node for listening, value for value. So if you do, I appreciate that. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And if you need to get in contact with us, we're on Twitter as well. You could hit up the Knoxville Bitcoin Network on Twitter, also on Telegram. So thank you for joining us. We will be back on Wednesday with Grand Rapids Bitcoiners. So thanks for joining us and keep stacking hard.